At a reception in Washington, D.C. in 1994, President Clinton told the anthologist, "I have a copy of your collection of speeches on my night table and I learn a lot from them." The president, known to flatter authors frequently in that way, is said to have a night table the size of a football field. I replied that the next edition should have one of his speeches in it, and he quickly asked which one. Without the deliberation over the collected works that such a decision deserves, I blurted, "Memphis?" Mr. Clinton nodded approval, adding, especially toward the end. On November 13th, 1993, Mr. Clinton flew to Memphis, Tennessee, to make a noontime talk to 5,000 ministers, mostly black, as the convocation of the Mason Temple Church of God in Christ. Because he tended to ignore texts when speaking to audiences, he knew speechwriter Carolyn Curiel prepared only a 3-page series of talking points, including highlights of addresses of the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. It was at this church that Mr. King had preached his last sermon before his 1968 assassination. However, on Air Force One, flying to the event, staff members urged the president to stay on message to the traveling press corps, devoting some time to his support of the North American Free Trade Agreement, time to his support of the North American Trade Agreement. Printed signs about NAFTA were set to be held by children during Atlanta appearances. Accordingly, the president cobbled together half a speech that included a review of blacks appointed by his administration, reminders that poor families had been given a tax cut, and 5 long paragraphs about the job benefits of NAFTA. He delivered it uncomfortably and knew it was received only politely. None of that is included in the text that follows. But speaking in a Pentecostal church is in front of a white rebel choir, the person in the pulpit is expected to speak as the Spirit moves him, which means no prepared text, working from his terse list of prompts, but wingingly. Mr. Clinton then gave the second half of his speech, which was the most moving long passage of his presidency. Daring to place himself in Dr. King's shoes, he challenged the audience to assume moral responsibility to teach nonviolence to meet the great crisis of the spirit that is gripping America today. Clintonian oratory usually runs long, in some cases, as in his 1992 Democratic Convention speech. The length seemed self-indulgent. It was as if he recalled his boring 1988 convention speech in which the only applause came at the words "in conclusion," and was determined to milk his winning convention for all the applause in it. 2 other long speeches, however, on religious liberty made to the James Madison High School in Vienna, Virginia, on July 12, 1995, and on affirmative action made 1 week later, were thoughtful, persuasive presentations of his views on these most controversial topics. Clinton credited Ms. Curiel with the affirmative action drafting. Jonathan Prince worked on religious liberty. The final portion of his Memphis speech, however, is what Clintonians like to think of as quintessential Clinton, personal, impassioned, anecdotal, self-questioning, colloquial, bitty, and with Bible-quoting Southern Baptist cadences, uplifting. On Curiel's wall is a picture of audience members, many with hands in chins, in pensive rather than revivalist mood. This had not been billed as a major speech, she recalled, but on the way back, we all knew something major had happened. Just before mounting the pulpit, Mr. Clinton listened to a lone saxophonist play the hymn Amazing Grace. Hello.
Okay. Amazing Grace is initial cap.
Yeah.
Alright, let's see.